everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Celestial Tree. I'm an astrologer, intuitive reader, and soul psychologist as well. And today we are going to be talking about the upcoming Mars retrograde beginning at 6 degrees of Leo on the 6th of December. And it will be retrograde up until the 24th of February 2025. Where it will go direct in the sign of Cancer. So we're going to talk a little bit about what Mars retrograde means more generally, more collectively, and then I'm going to give you the horoscopes for all 12 signs. If you watched my last video, you'll know that I've been a little bit under the weather. I'm still under the weather, so just excuse me today. So before I get started, here is a gentle reminder that if you would like a reading from me, you can book with me on my website at celestialhealingrealm.com. And remember to subscribe to my brand new YouTube channel. I'm so grateful for all the love and support that I've got. I'm having the time of my life on YouTube. Actually, so yeah, subscribe to my channel for more spiritual tips and astrology updates as well. Also, my year ahead readings are still discounted. I think there are actually 2 slots left, so if you want to book a year ahead reading, it's like an in-depth analysis of the year ahead, and it's, yeah, we basically go through what energies you can come to expect in 2025 astrologically speaking. So if you're interested in that, just go to my website and it will be there. So yeah, Mars retrograde. So similarly to Mercury retrograde, Mars retrograde is essentially where, due to Mars's orbital pattern, it appears to be moving backwards. It doesn't actually move backwards, but Mars retrograde has quite a significant impact on us astrologically speaking, because Mars rules over our action, our desires, our motivations, and we can kind of expect to be reevaluating a lot of these areas, especially the areas in which Leo and Cancer rule over our charts. So on a more personal level, we could be feeling like burnt out, low energy, a little bit short-tempered as well. More collectively speaking, typically I'm not one to sugarcoat things. I'm not, especially with the job that I have, I don't feel like it helps. As much as I'm an astrologer and I don't like to induce states of fear, because that also doesn't help, I'm also not the type of astrologer or intuitive that will just tell you guys what you want to hear. No shade. No shade. That being said, this Mars retrograde is extremely significant on a collective level. You can hear the seriousness in my voice. Basically because of the signs that Mars will be going through and some of the aspects that it will make to other planets as well. So I'm going to try and explain as best I can. So Mars as a planet rules over things like conflict and war, strike action, disputes, sexuality and bodily autonomy as well. It's the opposite of Venus in the sense that Venus rules over diplomacy and the law and like finding common ground. The thing with this particular Mars retrograde is that it begins in Leo, where initially we could see like frustrations, issues, delays, and conflict in regards to Leo things like the elites. When I say elites, I mean like, I don't mean the royal family, I mean like celebrity culture, the entertainment industry, and we can kind of expect a general slowing down and a general moving backwards when it comes to progress in those areas. And then on January 1st through to around the 6th of January, big day, big day. I'm thinking about the US when I say that. Mars will be at 1 degrees of Leo, Mars retrograde, and it will hit Pluto in Aquarius, making a very strong, tense opposition, which is kind of a big deal. Typically when we have a tense aspect in the sky, with squares, it's really interesting because with squares you kind of have some way to mediate the energy. Like squares create tension in order for you to find a solution beyond that. With oppositions, there's kind of nowhere to go. I told you I'm not sugarcoating it today, ever, not just today. But yeah, that opposition between Mars and Pluto, well, Mars retrograde and Pluto, is quite a big deal because a lot of people will kind of see it as like a signaling of it's like the beginning of Pluto and Aquarius. It's like it's a very strong transformational few days, and it's kind of like the birthing process of of Pluto and Aquarius. Like this is where we actually start to see things. I don't want to say kicking off because that's not really, well, it's Mars and Pluto, so but kicking off might be the right thing to say. So Mars retrograde opposing Pluto typically only lasts around 3 or 4 days, but because of the retrograde cycle of Mars, it will almost be locked into that opposition for around 6 months, until the end of April. So it will be exact between January 1st and January 6th, but it will kind of linger there for like the next 6 months. And yeah, like I said before, Mars opposing Pluto can indicate a really huge, massive power struggle. If you think about Pluto ruling over things like control and power dynamics, and then Mars, like I said, being the planet of conflict, it's a transit that has been building up over the last few months, and it actually peaked just before the US election on November 3rd. So try and remember what you were doing that day. So yeah, Pluto in Aquarius kind of wants us to own our power. Aquarius represents the everyday people, whereas Mars wants us to, yes, own our power, but also take our power and assert it as well. And this is a transit that kind of signifies a breaking down of the old and a birthing of the new. But as we know about birth, like if you've had children, you will know birth is not like a comfortable process. Yeah, birthing is very intense. It requires a lot of work, and it's kind of the same thing with this transit as well. I will say that it does signify, I'm trying to word it right, some pain and some discomfort, but also a desire to kind of shed the old ways of doing things. So yeah. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. This kind of leads me to my next point about Mars retrograde. So on January 7th, Mars retrograde will move backwards figuratively into the sign of Cancer. And if you know anything about Cancer, it rules over the family, it rules over the home, your roots, tradition, the past, as well as women and our bodies. Cancer's ruled by the moon. So the fact that Mars will be retrograde in Cancer and opposing Pluto indicates a couple of things. One, Mars is quite an aggressive force. And that means that people can kind of sometimes feel very like overprotective, and very defensive. And because it will be in the sign of Cancer. Cancer rules over traditions. We might see people being really, really protective over their traditions and also over the country that they're from as well. So we can kind of expect to see a rise in patriotism, which patriotism used to be like, it's still prevalent, but I feel like in recent times, patriotism has kind of left a bad taste in a lot of different people's mouths, if that makes sense. So yeah, if you imagine that kind of like patriotic, if we want to protect our traditions, if you imagine that type of energy opposing Pluto, then especially Pluto being in Aquarius now, Aquarius is the sign of progression. It's the sign of breaking free from tradition in order to attain more freedom. So these energies are likely to kind of be at odds with each other. The idea of protecting tradition, and with Mars, it can sometimes mean by violent means. It's very likely, especially with Mars opposing Pluto in the way that it is. So these energies were opposing, on November 3rd, like I said. They were opposed at the beginning of January and then again around April 25th. So I just wanted to make you guys aware of that. I did mention this before, but Cancer does rule over women and the family. More specifically, it rules over women generally, but more specifically mothers, because it's ruled by the moon. So there could be some issues around women's rights and more specifically childbirth, or child rearing. So be on the lookout for those conversations and arguments and maybe fights, unfortunately, around those dates in terms of like women's rights and home and family and patriotism as well. So yeah, I know it's a lot, I know. But I wanted to make you guys aware because I feel like, not that I have a responsibility, but it just sometimes I'm like, I feel like there's no point in me sugarcoating it. Do you know what I mean? And obviously, the nature of astrology means that it could not be as intense as we see it, or it could be more intense than how it just depends, and we'll just have to see how it goes. So yeah, now I'm going to give you guys, I know it was a lot, let's just decompress for a minute. Now I'm going to give you guys your horoscopes on how this Mars retrograde will affect each sign. And please remember to listen to your sun sign and your rising sign as well. Aries suns and Aries risings. Mars will go retrograde in your 5th house of dating, fun, romance, hobbies and children between December 6th and January 7th, and then it will move into your 4th house of home and family. So between the beginning of December and the beginning of Jan, you could kind of get into some, in the UK we call it tiffs, but like arguments with your romantic interests, even with your children as well. You could find yourself arguing more if you do have children, with your kids, unfortunately. It might feel like there's a lot to be done. The 5th house rules over how we seek pleasure, and sometimes when Mars is retrograde in that 5th house space, it's kind of like, okay, I have all these responsibilities to be managed, I just want to kick back and have fun and do my hobbies, but I can't, and it's really frustrating. And this might especially be true when Mars opposes Pluto in your 11th house of friends and long-term goals. You could lose patience with a friend around this time. I'm gonna be honest. It's probably not anybody's fault. I mean, I'm talking to an Aries, so somebody will be at fault in this situation. But it's probably the stress of having all these responsibilities and additional things to do. So I feel like you might lose patience. This energy is temporary. I will always encourage you guys not to make permanent decisions in a temporary mood, even though when you're in the moment it might be really difficult to see that perspective. I do understand that. After January 7th, Mars will move backwards into your 4th house of home and family, so you could get into some fights with your family, or you could get into some fights with people that you live with. It does seem like quite an emotionally intense time for you, Aries, especially in that second half of that Mars retrograde cycle. And I will also mention that it will be really important to find, and I know I say this all the time, but a really good healthy outlet for stress and anger, and finding a really healthy way to release your frustration is going to be really, really important. And then after the 24th of Feb, things should feel calmer at home and in your personal life. And then hopefully you can return to that cheery, courageous Aries energy after the retrograde cycle is over. Taurians, ignore my squeaky chair in the back. Taurus suns and Taurus risings. Mars will be retrograde through your fourth house of home and family between December 6th and January 7th. And then it will retrograde back into your third house of communication, siblings, and local travel. So at the beginning of December through to the beginning of Jan, this could be a time where you do get into arguments at home or with family members or with people that you live with. They might get under your skin more than usual. The reason I say more than usual is because I know they get under your skin. And this could kind of come to a head at the beginning of Jan when Mars retrograde opposes Pluto in your 10th house. The 10th house, yes, it rules over career, status, and reputation, but it also rules over authority figures, people in positions of authority. So it is very likely that you will have, you could have a big fight with a parent or with somebody in a position of authority, like a manager or a boss. This argument, because we're talking about Pluto here, this argument might come about as a result of some tricky power dynamics that might be hard to navigate, and it could be as a result of somebody trying to sort of impose on your personal freedom, and we know how you feel about people imposing on your personal freedom, right? But that might just be how it feels from your perspective. It might not necessarily be that, but that's how it feels. After January 7th, Mars will retrograde into your third house, which means there could be some problems with travel. If you have to run any errands locally or travel somewhere, then you might need to leave some extra time to account for delays. And if you have a car, just be careful of road rage, please. Please, just be careful. There's also, the third house also rules over communication, so there's also a chance that when you're communicating or how you're communicating, you might be feeling frustrated, not through any fault of your own. It might just come across that way, and that could rub some people the wrong way. So just be aware of that after January 7th. And then after the 24th of Feb, misunderstandings, miscommunications should clear up, and you should be feeling a lot calmer and a lot less angry and a lot less, you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, after the 24th of Feb, hopefully things should calm down. Geminis, Gemini suns, and my fellow Gemini risings, I hope we're well. Mars will go retrograde first off in your third house of communication, siblings, and local travel between the 6th of December and the 7th of January. I nearly forgot then. Then it will move backwards into your second house of income and finances, and also self-worth as well. So between the beginning of December and the beginning of Jan, you might be feeling a lot more defensive. Your communication and your words might come off a little bit like, maybe not aggressive, because we're not necessarily aggressive people. Maybe charged. Charged is a good way to put that. The third house is also a very mental space as well. So I feel like what could help is finding some kind of mental outlet to help with all the kind of like anxious, nervous, mental energy that might present itself during the first part of this retrograde cycle. Also, if you are traveling between the beginning of December and the beginning of Jan, please do leave extra time, because it is likely that you will face some delays and some issues with road rage and things of that nature. So I wanted to let you guys know that in advance. This might also be particularly apparent around the beginning of January when Mars retrograde opposes Pluto in your 9th house. You could either find yourself in a very heated debate, or you could find yourself stuck in traffic on the motorway. So early Jan, it really could go either way. Try to plan ahead as much as you can, even though we can't always account for everything. We can always try our best, right? After January 7th, Mars will move backwards into your second house, which does signify some money issues for us. I know it's the last thing we need. Last thing we need. Watch for overspending. In the beginning of Jan, keep an eye on your bank account, please. Around this time, and then after the 24th of Feb, money troubles and even feelings of like your self-worth and confidence in general should start to feel a lot better, and things should feel like they have a lot more forward motion. Cancerians, Cancer suns and Cancer risings. Mars will be in retrograde in your 7th house of income, money and self-worth between December 6th and January 7th, and then it will move back into your first house of identity, physical body and your life path as well. So between the beginning of December and the beginning of Jan, there could be some extra focus on your financial situation, and there could also be the return of some financial issues. So what I mean by that is you could end up overspending in some way, and you could be doing a little bit too much like retail therapy if you're into that. So just keep an eye on your bank account during those dates. I will also say that there could be an unexpected expense, especially around the beginning of January, where Mars retrograde is in that 2nd house space and Pluto is in Aquarius in your 8th house of shared resources. So there could be some unexpected and kind of like out of the blue expense that kind of dampens your mood and could even cause some arguments between you and a partner. So I just wanted to make you guys aware of that. And then after January 7th, Mars will move backwards into your 1st house. So that could have an effect on your temper. I know you're pretty cool, calm and collected most of the time. But you might be feeling a lot more frustrated and a lot more angry. And it might feel like, why do I feel like this, you know? So do try and find a healthy outlet for that, and try not to be too impulsive between January and February as well. And then after the 24th of Feb, you should be feeling a lot calmer, and things should be feeling like they have a lot more forward motion. Leo suns and Leo risings. It's a big one for you guys. Mars will be retrograde through your 1st house of your life path, your identity and your physical body between December 6th and January 7th. And then after January 7th, it will retrograde back into Cancer in your 12th house of rest, spirituality and mental health as well. So between December and January, it is likely that you probably won't be feeling your usual Leo energetic self, right? You might be feeling a little bit more on edge. You might be feeling a little bit more like you're easily angered. And you might even feel the need to fight some people. Which I know you guys never back down from a fight, but yeah, that could very much be the case. I know you guys are naturally quite impulsive as well at times, especially Leo risings, but you might be feeling even more impulsive than usual. So I would take note of that and try to my teacher at school used to say, check yourself before you wreck yourself, and I feel like that's so applicable right now. I would also watch for moving too fast, because you might injure yourself in some way. Sometimes Mars has the tendency to bring about little accidents here and there, especially when it's retrograde through that 1st house space. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. Try and like slow down as much as you can and be careful around like fire and things like that. So when Mars retrograde opposes Pluto in your 7th house of relationships, marriage and contracts around the beginning of Jan, so between like the 1st and the 6th, there could be some power struggles in your one-to-one relationships. Doesn't necessarily have to be romantic. It could be a business partnership. There could also be some arguments and some disagreements as well. I will say that it is only temporary, so try not to make like any permanent decisions in a temporary mood, if you get what I mean. After January 7th, Mars will retrograde backwards into that 12th house space. Your 12th house rules over your rests your like solitude, rejuvenation, mental health, and spirituality as well. And it also rules over what is hidden. So there could be some out of the blue issues that arise that you kind of thought were put to bed, but they sort of present themselves again. And there could also be some subconscious blind spots, especially in the area of like triggers and mental health and things like that. So, and past traumas and stuff like that. These are things that could come back up and kind of irritate you, if I'm being honest. So I wanted to make you aware of that so that you can know to ask for support if you need to. This is also a time where you might, like I said, the 12th house rules over rest. So this is also a time where you could have some bouts of insomnia, or you could feel really like tired and lethargic. Like you might be sleeping, but you might just not have energy in the day. So I will say try and rest as much as you can over the next few months. And then after the 24th of Feb, you should be feeling a lot more yourself, and you should have more energy to do the things that need to get done. You just gotta like hold out until then. Virgos, Virgo suns and Virgo risings, I hope we're doing okay. Mars will be retrograde through your 12th house of rest, spirituality and mental health, and things that are hidden between December 6th and January 7th. And then it will retrograde back into the sign of Cancer in your 11th house of friends, groups, long-term goals for the future. So between December and Jan, you could be feeling very tired, very low energy, very kind of not in the mood, generally speaking. With Mars retrograde in that 12th house space, you might also have some trouble sleeping. But yeah, try and take it easy as much as you can, and try and get as much rest as you possibly can as well. Then around the beginning of Jan, Mars retrograde will oppose Pluto in your 6th house of health and work and day-to-day routines. So this bit of Jan, the beginning of Jan, is not a good time for health. Unfortunately, you could see the resurfacing of some small health problems from the past that you're like, I thought this was done, and it's not done. And there could also be some power struggles at work as well. So you could find yourself navigating some really weird, intense power dynamics with your work colleagues. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. Just be on the lookout for that, because people can be weird, right? Then after January 7th, Mars will retrograde back into that 11th house space, where you could be having some frustrations with your long-term plans, and even your friends as well. If you're in a friendship group, there might be some, I'm doing this, but it's like issues, like conflict in that friendship group. It's likely that your friends or your friendship group might be a source of frustration, and you might be feeling really, really impatient, and you're like, I'm not with the BS, like just leave me out of it, basically. You could also become aware of some limitations as well when it comes to your long-term plans for the future. And you might be feeling really impatient in regards to your achievements. And what I mean with that is that you're focusing more on what you haven't done rather than what you have achieved, if that makes sense. So I would say try and give yourself and your friends some grace around this time. Try and exercise some patience where you can. And then after the 24th of Feb, you should be feeling a lot more yourself, and you should have a lot more energy to deal with your friends and feel more optimistic in regards to your long-term goals as well. Librans, Libra suns and the Libra risings. Mars will make its way backwards through your 11th house of friends, groups and long-term goals for the future between just if I can get out between December 6th and January 7th. And then Mars will move backwards into your 10th house of career 10th house also rules over your status and your public reputation as well. So between December and Jan, there could be some frustrations and some impatience connected to your long-term goals. You might be thinking, why haven't I achieved that yet? Or you might be facing some like blockages when it comes to actualizing your goals. And there might also be some of that same energy with, frustration and impatience with your friends or your friendship group as well. There could be some disagreements or some arguments with friends. I know it's literally the last thing that you need. Like, you really don't need that right now. And these arguments and these disagreements with your friends might actually make you want to take a step back. Especially around the beginning of Jan, when Mars retrograde in that 11th house space opposes Pluto in your 5th house of like pleasure and dating and fun. There could be some, if you have a romantic interest and you're hanging out with your romantic interest and you're also hanging out with your friend group at the same time, or if you're in communication with each other, there might be some tension between your romantic interest and your friendship group, which means that you might have to navigate some really tricky power dynamics, either with your friends or with a romantic interest, depending on whose side you take. I don't feel like you would take sides, Librans, because that's not in your nature. Then after the 7th of Jan, Mars will retrograde back into that 10th house space, and that could mean some really deep inner frustrations in regards to your career and your career goals as well. You might feel like you're going backwards career-wise, which, it's not for me to sit here and say that's not the case, but it definitely feels like you feel like you're going backwards, and it could feel a lot difficult to kind of give yourself grace and go easier on yourself when it comes to your career. There could be a lot of judgment surfacing, and I feel like sometimes, Librans, you are a lot harder on yourself than you need to be as well. So I would encourage you to take a step back and review all the things that you have done career-wise, and try and be patient with yourself as much as you can, because you deserve grace and patience. So there's also a chance that while Mars is retrograde in that area of your chart, that 10th house space, you could get into some disagreements with people in positions of authority. The 10th house also rules over people in positions of authority. So bosses, mentors, parents, managers, things of that nature. There could be some arguments with those types of people. What I will say is that Mars retrograde is definitely a temporary energy, so try not to make any permanent decisions in a temporary mood. If you're feeling impulsive, try and hold out until after the 24th of Feb, when you're feeling a lot more yourself and you're feeling a lot lighter and a lot more optimistic about your future and your career as well. Scorpios, Scorpio suns and Scorpio risings. Mars will retrograde initially through your 10th house of career, status and public reputation. Don't know why I'm out of breath, I'm literally just sitting down. Between December 6th and January 7th, and then after January 7th it will move backwards into your 9th house of higher learning, beliefs and overseas travel as well. So between the start of December and the beginning of Jan, you could be feeling a little bit bogged down by your career, and you might find it difficult to find the patience for your career goals and the things that you want to achieve in that area. You might be pushing yourself a little bit too hard career-wise, and it might feel really, really difficult to, while you're pushing yourself, it might be hard to motivate yourself and find the energy to do career-related things. I would encourage you to try and find the grace and compassion that I know you guys have, and try and turn that inwards, and remember that you are only human. You're not always going to be on point. You're going to have days, weeks, even sometimes months where you're just not feeling it, and that is normal. There's also a chance that you might have some unsavory run-ins with those in positions of authority, because the 10th house also rules over people in authoritative positions. So you could have some arguments with bosses, mentors, parents, and managers and things like that. This could kind of come to a head where around this could kind of come to a head around the beginning of January, where Mars will oppose Pluto in your 4th house of home and family. So there could be some power struggles with family members and parents more specifically, where the power dynamics kind of feel a little bit intense and a little bit difficult to manage. And then after January 7th, Mars will move backwards into your 9th house space. And this could be a time where you feel the need to kind of defend your belief system in some way to people, and you can kind of find it difficult to see eye to eye with those who disagree with you. You might also experience some travel issues if you are traveling. I know currently we're in a Mercury retrograde right now, but if you are traveling overseas between January 7th and February 24th, just be aware that things might not be as smooth as you've sort of planned them in your mind, and try to leave as much time as possible to account for delays. I know. This is a temporary energy though, so try your best to stay cool and calm and collected as you usually are. And then after 24th of Feb, you should feel lighter and you should feel like things have a lot more forward motion. Sagittarius suns and Sagittarius risings. Mars will retrograde through your 9th house of overseas travel, higher learning and beliefs between December 6th and January 7th, and then Mars will move backwards into your 8th house of intimacy, shared resources, and the psyche as well. So from the beginning of December to the beginning of Jan, this could be a time where your beliefs and your opinions and your own personal philosophy might feel especially close to your heart, and you could find yourself in true Sagittarian fashion defending your beliefs and even arguing with people in order to try and kind of get them to understand where you're coming from. This could be especially true around the beginning of Jan, where Mars retrograde opposes Pluto in that 3rd house space of communication. So you could be having some really intense conversations with people about the state of the world and how you view it from your perspective. So just be aware of that and try to be open-minded, like remain open. I know you're already open-minded, but try and like be in that energy a lot more around the beginning of Jan. This is also a time where you could experience some travel delays as well, so try and leave lots of time before you leave the house to account for that. And then after the 7th of Jan, when Mars moves into Cancer in your 8th house space, it is likely that you could have some emotional or... The 8th house is a really intense emotional place. So what I will say is that when it comes to having like emotional and angry outbursts, there could be some below the surface anger, or even rage is probably a better word, that just seems to pour out between Jan and Feb. I would encourage you guys to kind of try and find an outlet for your anger during this time. If there are people that you can vent to, or if there's an activity that really calms your mind, then you might have to rely on that until near the end of Feb. There could also be some issues with shared finances, either a partner's finances or money that you share with an institution. So what I would say is, when it comes to shared resources, I want you to kind of watch out for power plays and control issues and very intense dynamics. And then after the 24th of Feb, you should be feeling a lot more yourself, and you should be feeling like you can handle things a lot better and with a lot more grace and compassion as well. Capricorn suns and Capricorn risings, how are we? Mars will be retrograding through your 8th house of shared resources, intimacy, and the psyche between December 6th and January 7th. I was going to say December 7th. That would have been way too quick. And then Mars will retrograde into your 7th house of relationships, partnerships, marriage, and contracts. So at the beginning of December to the beginning of Jan, this could be a time where you have some issues with a partner's finances, or finances that you share with a bank or another institution. There's also a chance of some power struggles and some difficult power dynamics, like trying to navigate difficult power dynamics with you and a partner, especially when it comes to the beginning of Jan, when Mars retrograde will oppose Pluto in your 2nd house of income. There could be some really like intense arguments and issues related to your personal finances and a partner's finances as well. I would say try to find a healthy way to express your anger. If you do need to vent to a friend, or you need to go to the gym and get the stress out that way, then I would encourage it. Do what you need to do, basically. And then after the 7th of Jan, Mars will move into your 7th house of relationships and marriage and contracts. So this could be a time where you're arguing more, or you're more frustrated with a partner than you usually would be, or not even just a partner, but your loved ones or people that you work with one-on-one, so business partners as well. You could decide to break off a partnership as well if things get to that sort of point. It is kind of a tumultuous time for sure, and I do feel like if you need to reach out to people around this time, then please do, and ask for extra support where you need, and make sure that you're taking the time and space that you need for yourself. Aquarius suns and Aquarius risings. Mars will retrograde through your 7th house of relationships, marriage, and contracts between December 6th and January 7th. And then Mars will move backwards into the sign of Cancer in your 6th house of health, work, and day-to-day routines until February 24th. So initially at the beginning of the retrograde cycle, there could be some frustrations in regards to your contractual obligations and your one-to-one relationships. So you could feel resistant to like compromise and to find a middle ground and things like that when it comes to your contracts and your one-to-one connections with others. You might be having a lot more fights with loved ones and finding it really hard to kind of like see their perspective on things. It might be kind of increasingly difficult to do that. But even though it's temporary, I want to kind of bring your attention to the beginning of Jan, where Pluto in your house, in your 1st house of physical body and life path and your identity, is going to be in that opposition with Mars retrograde in that 7th house space. So there could be some really intense power dynamics that kind of are hard to navigate. There might be some energies at odds in regards to your needs and in regards to a partner or a loved one's needs as well. And that could lead to a emotional outburst. So I just want to make you aware of that before it all kicks off. After January 7th, Mars will be retrograde in your 6th house, which could lead to the return of some minor health issues, potentially because of like excess stress or overworking. So please do try and find some ways to mediate your stress and your anger in a healthy way, because you could end up kind of like, why am I like sick right now? And it's like your body's like, well, we are angry and we are stressed. That's why. So there's also a chance that in terms of work, because Mars will be retrograde in that 6th house space, you could be feeling like really demotivated with work and with your routines. And there could also be some issues with like co-workers and colleagues that they just be rubbing you the wrong way. They're just rubbing you the wrong way. So try and take it slowly during the retrograde cycle. And then after the 24th of Feb, work and health and relationship issues should seem a lot smoother and a lot more easier as well. Pisces suns and Pisces risings, my fellow Pisces suns, how are we today? Mars will be retrograde through your sixth house of health, work, and day-to-day routines between December 6th and January 7th. And then Mars will move backwards into Cancer in your fifth house of fun, hobbies, and romance and pleasure. So between December and early Jan, you could see the return of some small health issues. And this could be as a result of like stress or overworking. So please try to manage your stress as best you can. I know I sound really like stern when I'm saying that, but I'm like, we need to lock in and manage our stress. You might be feeling really lethargic and really unmotivated when it comes to work and your day-to-day routines. And work could be a source of frustration, as we know that it sometimes is. But it might be amplified. It might be feeling like it's even more frustrating than it usually is. These things might come to a head around the beginning of Jan, where Mars retrograde in that sixth house space will oppose Pluto in Aquarius in your 12th house of rest, spirituality, and mental health. I would encourage you guys to really, if you can, take it easy around the beginning of Jan. Don't push yourself too hard and get plenty of rest, because it might be a time of quite like physical intensity. Like your body might just be like, I'm giving up. I'm basically giving up, like I've done too much. After January 7th, Mars will go retrograde in that fifth house space. So you might have some small like tiffs or like arguments with loved ones, or even with your children. The fifth house also rules over children as well. You might also feel like it's really difficult to have fun and kind of let loose, because you might be like saving for something, or you might have additional responsibilities. So yeah, I would kind of say like prioritizing and knowing that the fun will come post Mars retrograde. There's also a chance that an ex-lover or an ex-partner makes a return as well. That is the nature of Mars retrograde in the fifth house. So between the beginning of Jan and nearly the end of Feb, just be aware of that, because that is classic retrograde energy, seeing people return from the past where you're like, what are you doing here? That look on my face was not meant to be so like disgusted. So yeah. After February 24th, health issues, work issues, and tempers with loved ones and with children in general should calm down, and you should be feeling a lot better once Mars goes direct. So that is all I have for you guys today. Remember to like this video and subscribe to my new channel. I really appreciate it. And let me know in the comments how you guys plan to manage this retrograde cycle, because it's going to be quite intense, I know. Also follow me on TikTok and Instagram. They're both linked in the description box below. And do message me or send me an email if you have any questions. Happy healing, everyone.